If you've ever been on the internet and asked the question, what should you feed chickens? Well, you might have got the answer that you're going to only feed chickens from a bag with a picture of a chicken on it, or they're going to be poisoned and die. Well, today we're going to answer the question, what can chickens eat, with a little bit more common sense and reality thrown in there. Let me tell you about growing up in New Zealand and how we kept our chickens back in the day. So I grew up in a small rural town in New Zealand, and most people had chickens. It's kind of what you did because they laid eggs and eggs are good. And you know what? We fed our chickens kitchen scraps. Pretty much that was their main diet, and they got some wheat thrown in there. Occasionally, if we thought they weren't laying eggs right, we'd buy some layer pellets. But mostly, those chickens lived on kitchen scraps and wheat, and they were fine. Now, I'm not necessarily recommending that that is the best diet for chickens, but you know what? It can be totally fine. No one, when I was growing up, had heard of all of the nutritional requirements of chickens. They were there to eat chicken scraps and give us eggs in return. So, the chickens of my childhood, they got along just fine on kitchen scraps. But I will talk about what those kitchen scraps were. So, in New Zealand, back in the day, we mostly ate like actual food. There wasn't stuff in packages. Like if you got cookies in a packet from the store, that was a big deal. So our kitchen scraps were vegetable peelings and bread crusts and the scrapings from our dinner plates, stuff that had been made from real food ingredients. So that is a little bit of a caveat when I say food scraps, kitchen scraps. I'm talking about things made from actual food, because we were sort of, a bit backwards in a good way. When I was growing up, we still had a milkman that would deliver milk outside our front gate in glass milk bottles. So that puts it into perspective. The chickens were just fine, but they were eating pretty decent food. On the opposite extreme of that is what I believe to be the case in the United Kingdom, where my understanding is that you are not actually allowed to feed your chickens anything that goes through the kitchen. So if food goes through the kitchen, you are then not allowed to feed it to your chickens. Now, my UK viewers, I would love to hear if this is actually the case. I have heard this. I could be wrong, but that's pretty insane to me if that's the case, because really, from my perspective, the main reason people had chickens in the past and people have chickens today is because they serve such a great purpose in turning things that we can't use for ourselves into valuable things like eggs and chicken meat. So I would love to hear if that's actually true, because it's pretty wild. But yeah, that sort of shows the two extremes of, I don't know, government intervention or how people are thinking about the safety of what you feed animals. So that is really what we're going to get into today, the perspective of what is safe and good to feed to chickens. People who are really into keeping chickens can have some very strong opinions. And I have seen a lot of information sort of bandied about in YouTube videos, on forums, saying things like, you can't feed your chickens apples because the seeds are poisonous, or they can't eat this thing or that thing, or avocado pits. Well, chickens aren't going to eat an avocado pit because it's really big and they can't eat it. And avocado pits are toxic, but again, your chicken can't eat it. So let's just take a breath and think about what chickens are actually supposed to eat in the wild. They eat a lot of different things. So it's really not a huge deal. In my opinion, and I have kept chickens for quite some time, pretty much my whole life in one way, shape or another, and I have always fed them kitchen scraps and garden scraps And I don't even separate the scraps out into things I know chickens can eat and things I know they won't eat, like citrus peels. I throw it all out there into my composting chicken run because they're not going to eat the things they don't like, and the things they don't like are generally the things that are not good for them. I could make them eat those things if I cook them, but once they're cooked, they're generally okay for them to eat, like potato peelings, not an issue. Chickens just don't like eating them. You can get them to eat them if you cook them up. In World War II, that was a great strategy for kind of getting the most out of what you had, was boiling up all your scraps and feeding it to the chickens. So, you know, chickens have been around farmyards for a long time without scientifically formulated feed just for them. And they're still here today, so I think we can just chill out a little bit. In terms of the apples, yeah, apple seeds can be poisonous if you ate like thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of them. My chickens have access to an apple orchard. It's right here behind me. They eat as many apples as they like. I'm pretty sure they eat the seeds occasionally. They're okay. No issues. You don't have to take the seeds out and core your apples and make it this whole thing. Just throw it all out there. They'll eat what they want to, and they will leave what they don't want. I don't want you to think that what I am saying is that chickens can live on kitchen scraps and maybe just some wheat. I'm not saying that. If you want a healthy, happy flock, they do need to have a good base level of nutrition, which the easiest way to provide that is from a commercial formulated feed for chickens with a good protein level. That will keep them happy. But you can give them all the other things, and that will make them even more happy because they're getting some variety that they're not getting out of that bagged feed. My chickens have a diet of bagged feed, and that's what they eat twice a day, and then anything else that they get is just a bonus. But you do have to be careful when we're talking about feeding them not food from the sack about how active they are, because obesity in backyard chickens is a real thing. And it has real health consequences. So if you are eating a sort of mostly real foods diet, you're cooking from scratch, your kitchen scraps is just, like I said, crusts of bread and salad leavings and chopped up vegetables, things like that, then that's totally fine. If you have lots of processed food sneaking in there, or, you know, the crusts from your takeout pizza too often to the chickens, it's not going to be good for them. Just like people, they're not going to thrive with lots of fat, salt, and sugar in their diet beyond what they need. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about what the balance of their diet is. If they're getting a bunch of salad equivalent, that's fine. Give them that. They can have as much as you've got. If it's a lot of white bread or things in packages, maybe think about that. Because I cannot tell you that artificial colorings, flavorings, sweeteners are okay for chickens. They're probably not. Birds have quite a different digestive system than mammals, and particularly artificial sweeteners could be quite bad for them. So do be sensible about what food scraps you're actually throwing out to your chickens. So things I would not feed to my chickens are anything that's highly processed, anything that has artificial sweeteners in it, and I'm very careful when I feed out sort of like junk food, like leftover birthday cake or something like that, because it might have things in it that isn't great for chickens. Like, I don't know if chocolate's actually okay for chickens. It's not okay for a lot of animals, so be really cautious about that. You know, if you threw down like 70% dark chocolate, they're not going to eat it. But if you offer it to them as a delicious birthday cake full of butter and sugar, then they might eat it, and that might be too much for them, and it might be quite bad. So be really sensible about what you're throwing out. One thing I don't put out in my food scraps is anything chocolate based, just because I want to be really cautious about that particular thing. But like anything else, whatever. And if there's an occasional pizza crust in there, it's not the end of the world. It's just about being sensible and thinking about balance, just like for people. Chickens are omnivores too. They can pretty much eat the same foods that we eat, and pretty much foods that are healthy for us are also healthy for chickens. So it's not that difficult to think, hey, can they have this? Probably the answer is yes, but think about their lifestyle, just like we should be thinking about our lifestyle when we're choosing the kind of diet that we're eating for ourselves. The sun has just come out and it has got insanely hot, so let's wrap this video up. Basically, don't believe everything that you read or see on the internet. They might be right, they might be wrong. Use your common sense. Don't feed your chickens anything really stupid, but they can definitely have a lot more foods than just is what is in a bag with a picture of a chicken in it.